Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we are doing the Steam follow list cleanup in the spirit of spring cleaning, which is around the time that I'm recording this, although it will be airing quite later. I'm going through my Steam follow list, which I add new games that look like they might be worth putting on my wish list, which is the list of games that look like they're good enough to actually purchase and cover on my YouTube channel. It's a complicated process of several steps to make sure only the best of the best actually get to the wish list. And every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, like I said, I play Hearthstone, talk about video game news, and add in and look at new games that have come out on Steam. Today we'll be looking at games on the follow list that start with the letter I, and we'll be looking for several factors of reasons why it should either be completely removed from the follow list or added to the wish list. Now, Illusion: A Tale of the Mind is probably a pretty bad example game, because it has such a high quality CG animation to it. In fact, it's slightly suspicious high quality CG animation, and I definitely have played games where it looked very interesting visually, and then the team behind it, the developers, simply didn't have the gameplay design clout to make an interesting game there. That being said, that still gets it on the wish list because it is such a unique visual aesthetic, at least for that cutscene that you just saw there. In reality, maybe the camera is zoomed out further and it's a 2.5D platformer or action game with no puzzles in it and no enemies in it whatsoever. It could also be incredibly short. It could also have no writing in it. So there's a lot of things that could be wrong with it. Also, this game oddly doesn't follow the second category, which would be, is the game relevant in itself? If the game doesn't specifically catch my eye, which this one has, then I would want to see at least 20 verified purchases after January for any game that came out before January 1st, 2019. You can see this game came out June 1st, 2018, so it's been out for a while, either in early access or finalized versions, and not a lot of people have played it. So it falls out of relevancy, because even if this is an amazing game, at this point, it's not a game that I could highlight and get more people to probably play, because my YouTube channel's not that big. It's really just a possible hidden gem that I'll play for my own entertainment, and I'll highlight it to the few people that see my videos, but I doubt that means it will get them even a handful of new sales. So those would be the two categories: either mob rule, positive reviews with over 20 verified purchases, which is what this number is, purchases directly through Steam, not people that activated via a key or got the game for free, or just something special about the game. And I'd say there's something special about this game. That being said, when you look here, it is $19.99, and there are some concerns there, so I would like to look at the reviews. Some other red flags we might look for is if it actually describes how long the game is supposed to be itself, although it would be pretty easy for somebody to say their game is 10 hours and then nobody to actually be able to play it for more than an hour. If I happen to see a game that is English and Chinese, or English and Russian, there's a lot of low effort Chinese and Russian games, so those tend to be red flags. Whereas if it's any combination of languages, even including English and Chinese and English and Russian, then it's probably not indicative of anything specifically. This does have full audio in English and French, so this might be a French game, and it probably is an artsy, perhaps slightly obnoxious French game, but there's a decent number of artsy, obnoxious, perhaps a little bit obnoxious French games out there. They're not terrible, though. So the only thing we'd be looking for otherwise is, for the most part, I want to see only the negative reviews, because that's the only thing that's going to be interesting to me. Here you have one with 28 hours on record, and this was reviewed July 23rd. Can't even complete chapter 1. There's a number of sequences in which the main character must run away from a monster of some sort. I've learned through repetition hundreds and hundreds of times that these runaway sequences are very unique. Apparently, they must be done in an absolute perfect synchronicity. I have practiced literally until my fingers are blistered on them. Now that sounds incredibly difficult. Now maybe this is just a reviewer who's not too good at games. That being said, you can see he has 273 games in his account and written 13 reviews. That's hardly a new player. Let's see. It's not good, not bad, but it sure... It's not good, not bad, but it sure ain't ugly. Like, what does that even mean? It's not good, it's not bad, and it sure isn't ugly. Okay. Next one, unskippable cutscenes. The text is wired and somewhat annoying. Half the game is, we can do it, Emma. Don't give up, Emma. Almost there. Made me rage quit because I didn't like it. Just get Call of Cthulhu instead. This person only played for an hour and 1.7 hours. This person played for 6.3 hours. So if you were to compare that by the 12 positive reviews, which kind of overrule it just by mob rule. Let's see. This point-and-click puzzle game is just the first episode with 3 chapters, which means the story does not have a final conclusion. Based on poor sales of the game, I have to assume it's not going to get a second episode. Took me about 6 hours to beat it, which is a little longer than expected. Let's see. The ending is less than desirable, making it not worth $19.99. There's a lot of negative reviews, even behind the positive reviews. So maybe we could look at this developer and see if maybe they're working on something else. Like, they haven't done anything since this, and this is a game I've owned and covered, and it was alright, but not great. Is this Raven's Court as the publisher, though? So that is also not the developer per se. That is the publisher. Steam has allowed, unfortunately, for publishers to pretend like they are the developers. So when you click on the developer's name, you then get tricked and taken to the publisher's page, which then makes it seem like there's a lot more games. Whereas if I was to go and click on like this game, it's a completely different studio and developer that made Dog Mendoza and Pizza Boy, which is a point-and-click adventure game that is already covered on my channel. So you have this tough problem here, where it's an unfinished product that has a really good bit of advertising in this first cutscene, and then that is that. Well, I think at that point, and I thought this was going to be an easy choice, and then all of a sudden I started doing more research. What this best relates to is a game that, I guess I also own these games. Yeah, I do. That also ran out of money and didn't finish itself, which would be Wolfie. Let's see if I can find it. Is it OLF? Yeah, it's WOOLFE, the Red Hood Diaries. This is another game that looks really interesting. It had a lot more attention. It's from 2015, and it is on my fall list also, so I guess I would have to, once we get to games starting with the letter W, I'm gonna have to make that decision. The thing that I could say about this more than anything is, well, the developer Grin has gone out of business. I believe Rebellion, the publisher, bought the rights to this, and so they have at least the art assets to potentially make a remake or restart the series and try to have a finished game instead of ending on a cliffhanger, which is what it does. So it's the same problem twice over. And I guess I'm gonna have to just realize that sometimes art is unfinished. It just happens. And as a video game critic, I kind of want to cover even unfinished art, at least in a few instances when it looks particularly good. So I think this is going to the wish list, even knowing that it's probably a nightmare and it's probably not going to be that good of a game. I believe there was another game, I don't think it was called Echo, that, let's see, I guess I could find the name of that game if I search We Happy Few, because it's from the developer, Compulsion Games. Contrast. Here's another game I covered, and it looked very interesting visually, if we can actually show a cutscene of the characters, but frankly all of these elements and cutscenes you see are not a good representation of what the game actually is, and the game isn't actually that good. Try to jump around to see if we can even get this character in light. See, this Contrast is built around the ability to jump into the background in the shadows of walls, which severely limited the gameplay mechanics and made it probably, if I were to guess, extremely expensive and difficult to develop for. And Compulsion Games certainly did the same thing with We Happy Few, by making a game that was too complicated and kind of a pain in the butt style game for what people thought it was going to be and what people wanted it to be. So we've wandered in this conversation while I'm thinking it over my head to several different games. And yeah, so this is going to the wish list for pretty much as a special exception. That's how it's gonna go. This is a special exception. It's potentially paying way too much for a game. I do have a plugin that's not working right now that tells me a historical low price, so maybe I could get it down to $5. I think $5 is a much more reasonable price for this. If this always stays at $20, even on the wish list, I think I would probably do enough research to realize this is not the game that I'd want to spend that much money on. See here, it's labeled as episode 1, but they've changed the name up here, so it's not labeled episode 1, which is slightly suspicious. And kind of bait and switchy. Steam should probably crack down on changing the name of games quite a lot more than it does. I've seen games with completely different names. Next, moving on to the next game, that took way longer than it really should. We have a game called Immortal Darkness: Curse of the Pale King, which looks like it's a RPG dungeon crawler. And while I don't know why I would specifically want to play this RPG dungeon crawler. It has real-time combat. It doesn't look terrible. I don't know if these are procedurally generated dungeons or if this is just one large dungeon from the beginning to end. Not sure what specifically is grabbing my attention other than this chibi looking anime character, which all 3D Japanese dungeon crawlers pretty much have adopted this art style. Perhaps in October 17th of 2018 it was a little less common, but I don't think there's much here. Yeah, I'm not seeing a lot of reason. By the way, the reason why these images are not loading is because right now I have so many Chrome tabs up that they are using up, we're back up to about 74% of my RAM, of 16 gigabytes of RAM, so apologies on that. This does seem like you have a chain lightning style of attack that you use a lot, but yeah, there's nothing here. This really isn't my style of game. Dungeon crawlers in general tend to be not very high quality games. A lot of dungeon crawlers have nudity in them just so that they can sell them. Speaking of nudity, I have a blurring function that if we run across anything tagged with nudity, I'll have to check out the screenshots to make sure they're YouTube friendly. So you may see that happen a couple times. But yeah, if I never covered a dungeon crawler on my channel, I'd probably be fine. You get into games that are more than just dungeon crawlers like Diablo, and you have a different experience. Or I have Darkest Dungeon. I think I'm missing some of the DLC, but it certainly is a game I'm trying to get around to. Unfortunately, Darkest Dungeon is like really long to play. There's only one negative review. Let's see. I'll play a lot of games that have you normally spamming spacebar while also pressing 1 to 6 keys while trying not to accidentally press QWE. There are some keyboards I've done to help it, but keybinds I've done to help it. So they don't like the key binding as a negative review. Controls are a bit slow for a top-down action RPG. A lot of these positive reviews, it's questionable. Like 103 hours on this game, 66 hours on the game. Did they just leave it running? 2.7 hours on the game, 16 hours on the game, 4.5 hours. These times are pretty high on how much people have played it. I just don't see that. I really don't see a game here you'd really want to play that often. Okay, well, I have never heard of this developer. I've never heard that it's self-published. I'm sure this developer hasn't made anything else. This game came out in October of 2018 and they haven't announced anything else. So the only thing I can guess is that this has to leave the fault list. Just seems simplistic. And in truth, I don't know if I'd ever want to play a dungeon crawler game. I think I've said that. So next we have a game called In Death that was created exclusively for VR according to the description on the right. I do not recall ever seeing this game. It's a roguelike shooter set in a godless afterlife, battle through procedurally generated levels and dungeons in intense range combat coupled with unique locomotion system, perfectly attuned for your fighting style. If this is the game I'm thinking about, there was something describing this game in particular. It's claiming it supports RTX in VR, which would be interesting. Something in the description of about this describing it like a Pac-Man game, or one of the reviews I saw for it, which would be weird, certainly. A lot of ghosts, bows and arrows. It all looks really nice. It's 90% positive. After seeing this game, there's very possibly some VR archery games that I should remove from the fall list that I've let stay on the fall list. Inherently, because I will always go through these lists alphabetically, there's really no other way to do it. I will always potentially look at everything from that perspective. So I'd have to have remembered that this game existed and gone back to games starting with the letter A. Well, I don't suppose there's anything to do here. For VR games, I still very much seriously doubt I'd ever buy a VR headset. In fairness, this would probably be in the top 10 of games I would try and buy and play. VR games still do have a tendency of being an experience where you're standing in one place and shooting at things that are coming towards you. That's not fixed in this, although it does seem like it has teleporting abilities, so you teleport and move throughout the world. I'm not exactly sure what the roguelite elements would be in this, whether you're unlocking more health or more damage or something like that. Apparently, early access is no longer a thing because it's not tagged as early access, but still it's a VR game only. I'm still very surprised people make games that are VR only. Would make a lot more sense to switch your game to be half VR. Now, if we look at the 44 out of 466 positive reviews, it's this tenfold overrun, so let's see what the negative reviews are. Here we have something that came out May 25th. The devs stopped posting in the community months ago, and game-breaking bugs abound. Abandoned project, do not buy. Interesting. Let's see what the last update was. March 15th. And it was a patch. It's kind of hard to buy that story. And frankly, if I was trying to tank somebody's game, that's probably the best thing you could ever say. Been trying to like this game, I just don't see it. I'm not sure what everyone likes this. I might be one of the few that doesn't. Might also be that they're doing review manipulation and paying people to review it positively, although you'd have to be paying people to actually purchase the game, play the game, and then review it positively. Pretty average game to be honest. If you want to play something like this, then buy The Lab or Dead Effect 2 VR. Meh. But when I like the game, the visual design is fantastic with a coherent art style and a real polished feel for the game. It's a treat to walk around, however. One thing that really kills it for me is the bow mechanics. The length of the string is drawn leads my right hand behind my ear. This makes precise aiming nearly impossible. It's a shame since a simpler game like The Lab managed to get that right and it's drawn to the cheek. Horde control system. Game itself looks and felt great. I believe you'll enjoy the title, but they're still reviewing it negatively. There's no joystick option for Windows mixed reality users, which seems like a problem. And see, a lot of these reviews down here are early access reviews, which get lower priority. And somewhat fairly, I suppose. But it is certainly early access is a way to put out a bad, buggy game and then eventually patch it to a good state. Now, normally I don't look at positive reviews, but I am in a bit of a quandary here. I don't know if I want to keep this on the wish list or the follow list now, because it looks really good, but I'm seeing a lot of negative reviews. The negative reviews are about 1/10 of the positive reviews. Yes, it's a grind, but the progression and ease of the gameplay makes it a game worth revisiting. It's 5 out of 5, 5 out of 5. Great game, love it. See, if anything, I imagine this game, 122 hours in the game, this probably is an example of the state of VR games in general. There is not a lot of games out there, to put it blankly and simply. And so if something is even mediocre, even when it is particularly high priced at $30, it gets the treatment like it is a perfect AAA developed game, when it seems by the negative reviews this isn't a perfect AAA game. It's just a highly polished indie game with a potentially somewhat buggy interface. That being said, this still is the best looking VR game I think I've ever seen, so I don't think I can do anything more than that. And noticing you're also using a crossbow sometimes, so you get different kinds of bows and arrows, and bolts. And this has a shield. So yeah, this should just stay on the follow list. We'll give it, I guess, another 6 months to a year, see if it cleans up and gets more reviews. In the end, it still doesn't go anywhere, because I almost certainly am not going to buy a VR headset until they got relatively cheap, around $150, and we saw a lot more games that looked like in-depth that had to have VR to play. I cannot imagine I would ever want to expend that cost, let alone I have no idea how I would stream or record that. It'd probably be a nightmare. Next, we have a game called In Your Realm. It came out August 17th of 2018. And this looks like a Binding of Isaac style clone game. Being a big fan of the Binding of Isaac series, and it being one of the very first games, if not the very first game I covered on my channel, a clone of it is an intriguing idea. Sure, I think for the Binding of Isaac style games, Binding of Isaac by far will be the best game in that category for a very long time. Roguelikes with procedurally generated dungeons and a ton of pickups and item drops. But it would be interesting, certainly, in general concepts, to see somebody try and tackle it and compete against it. And the one thing I always said about Binding of Isaac in particular is that if you just made the exact same game with the exact same items and took out the religious context and the gore and the things that could be labeled as offensive, if you just made it kid-friendly, you could probably make a pretty good clone of that game, although there'd be a lot of tight controls and programming. And I suppose the argument against that is, when Binding of Isaac was one of the very first games that came from PC to the Nintendo Switch, that certainly showed that Nintendo was more than willing to put a mature game on their platform. See, this was updated April 20th, but looking at it, it's a $5.99. It doesn't have any relevancy, this game. It's less than 20 reviews. Yeah, there's really nothing in this that looks good. So I kind of question why this is even on the follow list. Although, in previous recordings, I have found that sometimes things are on the follow list because I accidentally put them on the wish list. I clicked the wrong button and they're just there. So it's also possible things are just on the follow list for that reason. Which at a certain point means I just kind of danced around and evaluated this game for no reason when I could have just looked at it for 5 seconds and said, nah. But I, again, don't think there will be too many games starting with the letter I, so we probably have plenty of time here. Next, we have a game called Inch by Inch. You play a shrinking scientist in a race against time. You need to find all the necessary formula and ingredients to produce the antidote to stop shrinking before you produce the before you are too small to operate the life-saving equipment. So I believe this, it's not VR. Interesting. I would have thought this would have been a VR game, but it isn't. So then it becomes almost like a sequence that would be funny in a minigame. But I don't know if this really is a full game. This came out March 10th, 2018, and I suspect this room is exactly the same every time, and it doesn't randomize or change anything. It seems like from this screen you can adjust some sandbox settings, but nothing that would really make you want to play the game multiple times. It's a little funny that this isn't a Alice in Wonderland game where Alice would be shrinking. Take note here, you picked up that glass container and he put it right through the screen of the microwave without opening the microwave door. And yet, earlier, he opens and they animate the refrigerator. So, it's a pretty unfinished product from what you're seeing. Even in the cutscene, that they highlighted a clear animation that's missing. Let's look at the reviews and see what we can get from this. Nice short gun. I played a ton of itch version. I played a ton of the itch version. So it's an itch.io style game. And a lot of people have argued, and there's reason and logic behind it, that there should be more curation on Steam, and short games like this should either not be allowed or segregated to a different storefront. In the end, I don't think it really matters because you have the 5 people that reviewed this game, this one that was activated by a key, not counting as a review as far as Steam is concerned, and that number up here is concerned. So, particularly in the last year, Steam's overhauled recommendation engine has done a pretty good job about not recommending games unless they are pretty big, which is probably good for the consumers and very bad for the developers. Not sure what I want to do with this. It's $2.99 though, and I'm okay with playing small games, so I think we can put Inch by Inch on the wish list, get it on sale, maybe get it down below $1, and that would be very helpful. There are times when you're buying a game during a summer sale or a Steam sale in general that you are just $1 below a certain threshold, which would give you some extra rewards. Often they'll give you another trading card to improve the badge level during a sale if you go over $10 amounts. So if you need to spend just $1 more and don't want to spend $10 more, something like Inch by Inch could make some sense. Next game we have on Steam is called Incredible Mandy. It has 22 reviews, 95% are positive, verified purchase reviews. This came out November 26, 2018. It says it's an adventure puzzle platformer puzzle game. What I'm seeing here looks like a game that should have been more well known. And I sometimes wonder about some of these games if they were projects that were intended to be on a console and did not have a publisher, or they lost their publisher. Certainly that has to happen, although you really never see any evidence of it. But certainly a third-party developer has to be hired to make a game, and then the publisher pulls out at a certain point. We can see inside this video they're showing a anime looking cutscene that I'm sure is just an intro video. Video games having intro videos that look different or significantly different from the game are not something that's particularly welcome to me, and I don't like it. That being said, this does look like a game that's something. I suspect it may be a little janky. I suspect it may be short. I suspect it may not play as well as it looks. Got a lot of screenshots here that don't want to load, but I think it's more of a case of I'm not giving them enough time to load. So let's go down and look at the reviews. There's another game called Koi, K-O-I, and that's bundled together. Let's see, maybe this was an early access last time I looked at it. It's English and simplified Chinese with full Chinese, so this might be a low effort Chinese game, but from what I'm seeing, I don't think it falls in that category at all. This might have been a Chinese developer that was trying to sell their game. We could go into a long rant, certainly, talking about how over the course of the last part of 2018 up till right now, as of recording, it's been very difficult for Chinese developers to get approved to sell their games in China, and I'm not even sure what the legality of selling your game outside of China is, but it seems like a lot of people are doing that. So we have got it for free, recommended. It reminds me of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Rime. Rime was another game that looked very interesting, but actually got poorly reviewed. Let's see. Let's look at just the 7 negative reviews, because I like the negativity. The truth is, like, if you're critical of a game, it's going to probably sound negative, and once you're critical of a game, it is probably going to then feel like you're not recommending a game. At the end of the day, I feel like a lot of the reviews and coverage I put of games sounds a lot more negative, but I still enjoy playing the games and still keep doing it. So, trying out the demo version, but don't buy the game because of updates. This was December 1st, 2018, and this was received for free. This game looks like it has amazing potential, however, the awful frame rate throughout the gameplay. This again was December, feels like beta in its current state. So 2 games in December, 2 people complained about the frame rate, basically. And certainly that could be an issue. And I definitely have had that issue, particularly Resident Evil 4 and all of the Lego games have not run properly on my new PC, even though the Lego games at least were running very well on a gaming laptop that was several years old before. Now, I suspect that's because of the video card I have, and I'm attempting to purchase a new one. Eventually I'll get around to that, but I've been promising to do that probably for 2 or 3 years at this point. It was a big investment to buy a new video card alongside building a brand new computer, and I'm certainly not getting my full monies out of it. That being said, this game in this cutscene does not seem like it has real frame pacing issues or low frame rate. Frame pacing being that it cannot consistently give you even like 20 frames per second or 30 frames per second. So in 1 second it might give you 10 frames, and then the next second it might give you 60 frames, and then the next second it might give you 5 frames. And when you see that, that's very noticeable and often messes with TVs and monitors that they're hooked up into. Looking at this and just having to assume that the bugs have been fixed, Incredible Mandy does deserve to be on the wish list. Yeah, it deserves a chance. I would hope that it's cheaper. This probably, even at half off, is still probably a little too expensive. You want to get down to like $5, but that's typical in my experience for most games, is if I want to get them as cheap as possible, because the investment is high, although not as high as it used to be. Like when I first started buying games on Steam, you couldn't get a automatic refund after 2 hours. Now I think it would be very possible to do that. Because we're covering games that start with I guess we are going to have a high persistence of games that are either Japanese or Asian of some sort, because there aren't too many English words that start with the letter I. So this next game is called Incubo. It's a side-scrolling platform game with a semi-horror theme. Interesting. Present many ghosts from around the world in a game as enemy and bosses. You play as a child in his nightmare and discover the truth about his story. It seems like this might be a Chinese or foreign language translated to English. This seems strange, and I'd like to see some actual gameplay and not what is a intro or trailer cutscene. Although I would admit this is a lot less animation than doing 3D animation, so that they may have saved themselves some budget to actually make the game better by not making a trailer. And this is perfectly acceptable in my mind, to do a backstory or intro video. But that entire video clearly had no game footage in it, from what I can tell. So let's see what the game actually looks like. It looks like it's a little too zoomed out in a Limbo style game, and it seems like he either doesn't have a way of attacking enemies and is just taking damage by walking around them. So it's a little simplistic in what it looks like as far as the gameplay, platforming, running. This doesn't look terrible though. Looks nicely animated and looks like it's got a full story to tell. Screenshots could give us a little bit more information. Yeah. I don't know if I particularly am chomping at the bit for what would be an extremely horrific game with a child's character. If I was going to play that style of game, I'd prefer to play something like Fatal Frame than a flat 2D animation style. But yeah, that might work too. So here the game is $6.99. February they rolled it back to the previous version, the same day that they rolled out the previous version, and they haven't done anything in about 6 months since then. That being said, it's 79% positive with 65 user reviews, verified purchase reviews. It says it has full audio in English. It has 30 achievements, which is not an extreme amount. It's a little high. This is a newer game, so it has a mature content description, frequent violence score, general mature content. So in general, this is probably a teen plus or M-rated game, even though it has that art style. if we look at the 22 compared to 81 positive, the 22 negative, let's see. Premise is a good one. Throws small child in the world, monsters ripped from various folk tales. Unfortunately, the execution is so poor that you simply can't recommend this. You can check out my impressions if you look at my YouTube channel. I generally don't trust reviews from YouTubers posting their links to their videos in the review section of Steam. Don't get me wrong, I have considered doing it myself, but it's not worth the effort, and it probably gets you 0 views. Totally unplayable with keyboard, some parts almost impossible to pass through. Devs should test it better. This is February 8th, so it's before the update. Let's see. Here we have one February 25th. I changed my review from positive to negative, this being the reason. The chosen language, Bahasa Indonesian, is nothing. Terrible control. Worst at every stage, especially in the grandma puzzle. Many bugs and flying box. That seems like this person doesn't speak English too well. Tolerated it for 36 minutes. Every cutscene video is destroyed by bitrate, which makes them look like they're being viewed through a tennis racket. Controls are stiff and unresponsive. Every single time you die, you start a level, or your character automatically interacts with something, which is weird since there's literally an interact button. You can't skip it. It happens every single time. So when he looks at a photo, every single time you pass by here again, if you die, he does it again. Fun. Let's see. I recommend this to absolutely no one. So those are passionate negative reviews, and there's more I could look at, but these are the ones that have been highlighted as being the most helpful. So is this a game that just doesn't have enough polish, or do I go mob rule and say, well, it's good enough to deserve coverage? Let's see. I imagine that this developer has never made anything else, and I imagine that this publisher, well, actually this publisher is publishing a highly promoted game by the mainstream video game media right now, Dark Devotion. Interesting. But seems like they've also published some other things. Is this Walinda game somehow connected to Incubo? Because the art style seems to be somewhat related. Or is this just the art style that they go for a lot of times? I'm doing far too much research than what it desires to be. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games in development by this publisher, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games that are out right now. By the way, I believe this is a different plugin. I think it's called Enhanced Steam, that highlights things in blue if they are on my wish list. And I think maybe highlight some in green if you own them. So it just helps you work through this. Well, I can't be that precious, quite frankly, and just only play games that I'm 100% absolutely certain are good. This does have that visual appeal and makes it look slightly different. I did like covering the game Limbo. Limbo clones, there haven't been a ton of them that needed to really be covered. So I think Incubo deserves to be on the wish list. Again, when I have to put my money where my mouth is, I probably wouldn't pick this game, not unless it's really, really cheap, down to $3 or less. And at that point, that might be fine. to buy a game that's kind of bad and that I might rage quit after 30 minutes of. Let's move on. Next we have a game called Indian Summer that came out November 20th, 2018, and I'm wondering here if I just thought this fox was cute and that's why it's on the follow list. Let's see, it's Uwe Rosenberg's puzzle follow-up to the smash hit Cottage Garden, which I've never heard of. It seems to be some kind of puzzle game where you have to place tiles, and by placing the tiles maybe you make paths, or maybe you're matching patterns. So it seems like this is a real board game, or for lack of a better term, yeah. And so I might be learning something new by playing this, or I might just be learning a made-up game that nobody else. Apparently in 2016 there was a game called Cottage Garden. We're gonna look that up, I suppose. But the other thing to do would be to look at the 2 user reviews, because certainly this isn't relevant at its current state. So, Cottage Garden is definitely not a game we saw on the follow list, and it's not on the wish list. And this would be the game to cover and play. Frankly, I think this guy is just lying at this point, though. If this was such a smash hit, then why does it only have like a few reviews? Game itself is not fun enough, works okay and looks okay, but there is no working online multiplayer, which might be necessary. So only local multiplayer, although I doubt there'd be an online presence. And compared to several other party games that you could be playing on Steam, it definitely doesn't stand up. So 9 verified purchase user reviews back here, and this was the smash hit according to this description. I, like most people, don't like to be lied to, and I don't see the metric in which you could say it was a smash hit, unless it was just super popular on some other console, and that's why it doesn't have any reviews here. This to me feels like an irrelevant sequel to an irrelevant game. It looks fine, but that's kind of it. And so for poor advertising, and quite frankly for not just paying somebody to cheat the system and review their games, you don't even really have to pay anybody too much. You could have easily handed out free game codes to reviewers and free game codes to just random people on Twitter or Facebook to get more reviews than 2. This has been out for over 6 months. This game deserves, I think, to leave the fall list and not make it to the wish list. Oops. Well, I don't know what just screwed that up. I hit the wrong button. Well, it gets a reprieve because of my stupidity. Yeah, I'd have to know off the top of my head how I could undo a Control U. Oops, what is that? Nope, that ain't it. Let's see, Control Shift Tab. There we go. Control U just brings up the source code of a web page. So yeah, okay, that game just lucked out. I'll have to look it up again and let's see, what was it called? The previous game was called Cottage Garden, so I'll just type in remove in my notes sequel to Cottage Garden, and then I can search it that way. What a dumb thing to do. Anyways, next game we have is Indivisible, which is not out yet. It says early 2019, which means it should leave the fall list for two reasons. Because A, once again, it has lied and not bothered to update its release date. We are not, as of recording, in early 2019. This is from 505 Games, which I believe that's the team that, well, 505 Games is publishing Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, which is another game that has been considerably delayed. They're also making Control, but I believe they also made the Halo games of old, although the only Halo game that's on Steam right now is Halo Wars, and I bet they didn't work on that. Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. I feel like 505 Games might also have been purchased by Microsoft. So that's a big time publisher publishing it. Although I guess the developer is Lab Zero Games, so if we click on that, we see that the game they've made before is Skullgirls, which is a fighting game, which was rated overwhelmingly positive, certainly, but this game Indivisible is a different product. And it's not a bad product at all. It looks really good. I definitely do want to cover it. I think most video game journalists of large enough fan base will cover this game when it comes out, if it comes out, which is unfortunately how you kind of have to phrase all of these statements. The female protagonist angle alone will certainly get people to post a lot of hot takes. One of the things about this game that seems slightly concerning is you're fighting with this axe that you get pretty quickly, and you then use it to open up areas. So it's a little Metroidvania-ish and a little Prince of Persia-ish in the gameplay. But then you get into these cutscenes where you will get these other friends, and it turns into more of a action-based RPG. Imagine Super Mario RPG if the game was sped up a lot faster. Although this cutscene, this video may just be sped up gameplay too. So there's possibly a problem in the gameplay style compared to the fighting mechanic, and the travel mechanic around the world might not be particularly well suited. Also, since this is an unfinished product, you just kind of never know about anything. It could be that what finally gets released is super short and disappointing. But right now, it doesn't need to be on the fall list. It definitely should just stay like every other game that hasn't come out yet and hasn't even bothered to put out an actual release date, as something that is up in the air, something that might come at some point, but something that is not here yet. And then we just jump through that. Next we have a game called Infinite Sunshine Dust, which looks like a RPG Maker game, and I can't imagine why I would want an RPG Maker game. It's even tagged RPG Maker by the users. I have no idea why I'd want to play this. I guess there's a different art set being used here. It seems like somebody may have actually drawn their own art tiles using RPG Maker and are trying to show a bit of skill. Unfortunately, this is still not enough to make it worth my time and my opinion to play RPG Maker games. And this is the old RPG Maker, which they've even come out with a new version that makes the games look a little bit better. And see, it is very possible that there is an interesting or good story behind some RPG Maker style games, and it just kind of doesn't matter. This seems like this is just a horrific style RPG Maker game that they want $11.99 for it. Original graphics and background music. That is slightly applaudable, but not enough. Meanwhile, if you want to compare the one RPG Maker that might be worth covering, it would be Angels of Death, which has over 1,935 reviews. And the reason why this is maybe worth playing is because it was picked up as an anime. This has no user reviews. Came out July 30th, 2018. And this game, frankly, is still probably not worth watching. And frankly, the anime probably isn't too worth watching. Mad Fodder, again, I think a game that got a lot of coverage, and for that reason has 1,141 reviews, and it looks like an RPG Maker game. So there are good ones, and not a lot of them, but there are ones that at least have relevancy. That being said, I'm not sure I would ever want to play any of them. Even some of these smaller ones have like 270 reviews. Let's see. So yeah, there's nothing to do on this. Either I assume that this is a hidden gem, or I just assume that it's nothing, and I have to assume it's nothing when it's not widescreen. It's using RPG Maker, the least revered game making engine that you probably could use, and doesn't have much to sell itself on. So Infinite Sunshine Dust is leaving the follow list. Next we have Initial 2 News Stage, fast-paced hack and slash featured action RPG. That's a lot of words that look like search engine optimization more than an actual description. Tells the tale of both the superpower world and the friendship. Our heroine wields 4 types of weapons and can dynamically switch between them. Hope you like it. Seems to me, if I was to guess, this is either an indie Japanese developer or an indie Chinese developer from that translation or that description. Now there is a game called Onichambra. There's several in that series, and only one of them are actually on Steam right now. And I am looking, I suppose, slightly for an Onichambra style game. This might have been coming from that perspective. A fast-paced action hack 'em up might be interesting, but I do have to question whether this has relevancy or whether this is good when it's 69% positive of 286 reviews. What this tells me, if I was to guess, is that this is a game that catches people's attention and people buy it, and then seems to not really entertain people or deliver at least what people are expecting. It's $24.99, so it is a big, expensive game. It's Japanese full audio, English full audio, and then Chinese support. It's single player only. 37 achievements. Let's see what the negative reviews say. I bet it's frame rate, I bet it's long load times, I bet it's short, things like that. It's typically the same things over and over again, because if you're enjoying something, a game is never too short. It just really isn't. A game only feels short when you're not enjoying some part of it. Alright, so December 29th, 2018, will there be an English patch, when I first started playing, everything was in Japanese. I don't think that's a valid negative review when this says English, and I've yet to see a game on Steam actually proven to lie about its language supports. Full audio both in English and Japanese. Apparently they're even selling itself as having the voice actress from Nier Automata and Dead or Alive in the game. Initial 2 takes all the good from the first game and throws it out the window. The game feels like an unfinished tech demo, which is not fun to play in action as an action game. It's really sad the developer sees this as an improvement to make things worse. The horrible translation makes it unbearably annoying, even more irritating. See, not a fan of teammates or drastic changes in tones from the first game. Combat feels significantly more weightless and floaty. Game performance isn't good. The game puts all of the rendering and load to the GPU. Even if you have the latest GPU or the most optimized, it will drop frames inevitably. This was October 20th, 2018. Game performance isn't that good on my machine. What would be helpful is if you could see what the machine stats were on when somebody reviews a game, but that's not something that Steam does, unfortunately. So what I want to see is Initial 1, because I think Initial 2 new stage is out, but I want to see the Initial 1 and see what this game is. Okay, I recognize this game. It's a hack and slash similar game. Seems like you have a different character you're playing as, and it seems like you're fighting several different enemy types. This, over its lifetime, is 78% positive and came out July 17th, 2017, and it is on my wish list. So the question, I guess, was, do I need the sequel to a game that's on my wish list on the follow list? And apparently at some point I was doing that. Also seems like they're kind of lazy, because they're just using what looks like the exact same art asset over and over again. And yeah, I guess at some point I was putting sequels to games that I thought I wanted to play on the follow list instead of having them on the wish list. The other thing I guess to ask is, have they done anything else? This is weird. They have the new publisher page, but the new publisher page is not showing off the Initial 2, whereas the developer search does bring it up. Interesting. Interesting quirk of how Steam seems to work. I would say the graphics do look better in this game, but clearly the gameplay is not an improvement. So yeah, this should leave the follow list. There's no question about it. Another contender is X-Blades, as far as a hack and slash action game with an anime looking character that you play as. But yeah, nothing here. This should leave the follow list. I need to realize that it is very possible that some games sequels don't need to be covered, even though I played the first game in the series. It's also possible that some games sequels might be good enough to play, but the original versions might not be good enough to play. One of the problems with my Steam library right now is I have several games that are the first in a long-running trilogy, but it's not really worth it to cover those first games, so I might just do a 30-minute spotlight on them, and then that would be that. instead of trying to play it from beginning to end. Next, we have a game called Ink Cipher. This came out July 2nd, 2018, and it has no reviews, which is kind of a shame because it looks like it might be a slightly interesting Caesar code style game. I believe this would be a Caesar code, where you're trying to match letters to coded letters and seeing if that solves things in a crosswords puzzle. I imagine there's a limited number of puzzles here to do this, and it might turn out to be pretty easy if you just do a Wheel of Fortune RST L&E style of gameplay and figure it out that way. This is 99 cents, so when it's on sale, it's going to be at like the minimum price, which I think is 69 cents. It contains over 100 puzzles with a free update planned, it says, but nobody bothered to review this. So then it comes down to a question of, do I want to risk it? And the risk is just so low at that price, unless this developer has made several other games. Maybe that would be the only concern. Here's a game from scheduled for 2020. This free update apparently never happened. This looks kind of like a troll game. And it's not reviewed positively. This looks like it might be a troll game, and this looks like it might be a troll game, and this might be a troll game. And these might not be troll games. They might just be not very well designed games and low effort games. And you could argue that he is flooding the Steam store with his products. There's 3 games coming out in 2016. This is the only game that has any reviews, and it's 90% positive with 10 reviews. So it doesn't look like it's much of a game either. So quite frankly, if this is a hidden gem, it should just stay a hidden gem. I would also say that this kind of game probably should just be a mini game in other games. I'd like to see more first-person shooters. Wolfenstein, the reboot of Wolfenstein, for example, there would be a very legitimate reason for there to be mini games where you have to decrypt a coded message to unlock some kind of bonus or get some kind of inventory ammo or something. But yeah, I don't have enough confidence in this developer, even for 99 cents. And I have so many other games to play, this should just leave the fall list. Next, we're looking at Insanius Express. I don't know why I decided to look at this one, though, because it hasn't been given a full 6 months. It came out February 8th, 2019. I think this is just 2 Points Hospital, which was a clone continuation of a previous hospital game that was very popular in the UK, apparently. So this is a clone of a clone. The only thing slightly different is it seems like you're doing psychology instead of medical conditions. Although in 2 Point Hospital, the medical conditions were always joke conditions and not real conditions. Yeah, I don't think this would be a full product, though. It's $9.99. It's stopped being updated in February for the most part. It requires a third-party EULA, end user license agreement. Here's 2 Point Hospital in comparison. Very positive, 5,234 reviews. So I don't know why in the world you'd want to play the knockoff version. There's a got the game for free, reviewed it, activated it by key, reviewed it positively, activated by key, activated by key, activated by key, positive, positive, positive. It's a bunch of positive games being activated by key. That's why it says only 4 verified purchases out of 11, which possibly set off some red flags and stopped this game from being suggested. This is the thing that YouTubers say all the time, is they get paranoid, and possibly rightfully so, that their videos get flagged via the internal AI recommendation engine, and then they just stop getting recommended to people, even people subscribed and even people clicking the notification bell, which I've experienced that too, and I don't know if it's a bug in their notification system or what, but it does seem to happen. And I'll have people tell me I haven't made videos in months, and I'm like, I've been streaming every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. There's been at least 3 videos every weekday coming out for years with no break. As far as Insanius Express, yeah, it's a knockoff, and this is the only game from this developer. We're doing a lot of research here, but at least when I click on the developer and come back, you get the screenshots loading. Yeah, this is leaving the fall list. Next we have Insomnia the Ark, which is mixed reviewed at 63% positive of 604 reviews. That being said, I would say it's kind of nice that that this has a lot of reviews, so it tells me it's a game people wanted to try. It's just it wasn't a satisfactory experience. Looking at this cutscene, looking at these hyper-realistic 3D models, this looks like a AAA game, or at least a AA game. So then the question becomes, what is wrong with the game? Screenshots, like when they load up, when they decide to load up, it seems like all these screenshots are of a game that looks very similar to the cutscenes. It looks like a first-person shooter with hyper-realistic 3D graphics. It seems like this game seems to like to tease, in the screenshots at least, people being naked, but they're not really. They're in space outfits or underwear, so far from what I can tell. And this game is not tagged with any nudity or anything. So what's the deal here? $29.99. It's from a developer and a publisher I've never heard of. It got an update May 24th, so it seems like they're still working on it, but it may be too little too late. It's English and Russian. That raises a bit of a red flag that it might be a Russian low effort game, but it in no way looks like that. Has a 54 on Metacritic, which people reviewed it on Metacritic. So let's look at the negative reviews. Posted May 20th. The camera stank, navigation is just as bad. Deeply wish the gameplay wasn't awful because the writing and the setting are pretty good. Total incompetence, and they tried to craft a hybrid VR traditional experience. Give me a break. So far they can't even get the base game to work as intended. Is there VR support on this? I don't even see any VR support. So did they rip that out? I recommend you at least a year before buy to devs make the game playable. That was in January of 2019. Really disappointed by the final outcome of this game. The whole premise of a world and visual style are very interesting. So you got people hyped, and this is what you never want to do in advertising, is you never want to disappoint people. And when you're selling a product, you never want to disappoint them. If you've got a garbage game, you want to put it in the best light possible, but make it seem and pretty obvious to most people that it is a garbage game. If you've got a great game, you put it in the best light, but you make it look like a great game. Here it looks like they have a garbage game that they made look like a great game. People bought it, people are upset, people are complaining, reviewing it negatively, and when somebody reviews something negatively, you can get the developer's response, which a lot of these seem to have a response, but I wouldn't be surprised if the response is your generic boilerplate, thank you for your feedback, garbage, which is not something you really want to see, and it's clearly just to make it seem like you're responding and like you care. This one looks like a shame, but that's what's gonna have to happen, and particularly in this case, unlike other games that are lesser known and perhaps not hidden gems, but hidden mediocre games that might have some reason in which I want to cover it, because this game has gone for hyper realistic 3D graphics, that those games are a dime a dozen, because it is not particularly good with the mixed reviews. The first impression is out the window, because this game has been out since September 27th, 2018, and it still hasn't probably fixed itself enough to get a new people. Well, I don't know what you do. You fix this game and then you have to relaunch it. You have to give it a new name, you have to remove it off Steam, and you have to relaunch it as something completely different. And say you fixed all the products and that you're going to, I guess, grandfather all the people in who were technically playing an early access game at that point. 200,000 word count is a large word count, not particularly for a visual novel, but pretty big. This looks like it is a Fallout, slightly inspired by Fallout game, which of course Fallout 76 probably came out after this point. But yeah, there really is no reason to play this. It had 5,000 Kickstarter backers, which that explains a lot, that it's a Kickstarted game, and like every Kickstarted game I've ever seen, they are disappointments, and basically they got their money through the Kickstarter at the beginning, so of course they're never going to fix anything. We can see this publisher has published one game that's on my wish list, Warhammer 40k Space Wolf. I think I may have all the Warhammer games on the wish list. I'm not sure I'd actually want to play all the Warhammer games or any of them. Whereas everything else that's been published by this developer is kind of nothing. So Insomnia the Ark, there's a game development studio called Insomnia that's well known. So that's an odd name and choice, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah. 605 people have already covered this game, already played this game. This game has gotten its chance, it's gotten its first impression. This should just leave the follow list. It's a shame. Interesting. This game is currently, as of last time I checked the news, being sued by the musician group Iron Maiden because of trademark infringement for calling its game Ion Maiden. Will probably take a while to see if that lawsuit files through, and in a weird way this game has been just kind of sitting around. It's allegedly, according to Steam, came out February 28th, 2018, but it's still in early access, and now it's getting sued, so almost certainly it's going to disappear. That doesn't mean you should probably buy the game if you had the opportunity. That being said, I would probably argue that Iron Maiden, the rock band, does not have a valid trademark claim for the phrase Iron Maiden, since the Iron Maiden torture device has existed for hundreds of years, and calling your game Ion Maiden is pretty different. At best, it's a parody on the name. The game, as far as I can tell, looking at this, doesn't look anything like it's infringing on anything else. This looks like it is a Wolfenstein 3D Doom style game made in a modern time without really having even modern graphics. It's being made by 3D Realms, creators of Duke Nukem 3D, Prey, and Max Payne, and I don't know if that's the new game called Prey or the old game called Prey. It's probably the old game called Prey. And if I was to guess, I'm pretty sure Duke Nukem 3D is owned as an intellectual property by Gearbox. Prey is owned by Bethesda, ZeniMax, and Max Payne. Maybe 3D Realms owns that. Otherwise, they have nothing as their own intellectual property, the license they make games on, which might explain why they have a female protagonist and they're trying to make a new series. If I were them, I would change the name quickly and just settle this, because it's not worth fighting for. This is another example of a game that, even though it's overwhelmingly positive at 97%, it's not finished. It came out February 28th, 2018. There's no reason why this kind of game should have ever been in early access or allowed to be in early access, according to if Steam had any rules against releasing games that really should be final products. And yeah, this should have come out as a finished product, at least episode 1, maybe done the Doom thing and promised some DLC. If we were to come down here, let's see, look at the 31 negative reviews out of 988 positive reviews. It's good, but for all intents and purposes, this is a hype demo for a pre-order. There's 4 level packs, but 2 of them are infinite ammo modes. Still waiting almost Q3, and still no word of a release date. This was posted May 5th. Seems like a cheap second-rate mod for Duke Nukem 3D. Let's see. Buy on sale, boring enemies, mediocre gameplay. Developers and cheaters, one demo level for $10. The game, this should be released in Q3 2018, but it's 2019 and no release date. Let's see if we could find any review, because them being sued might be the best bit of information as far as reviews that they could have. So here, if we just look at a relatively short date here, let's see, is there anything here that would mention them being sued? Nope. So nobody's bothered to write any kind of positive or negative review bombs or off-topic reviews because of this. And I guess there wouldn't be any news on the page that would mention this. So you're just gonna have to believe me that they really are being sued. I would like to see what 3D Realms otherwise has as a publisher. Game called ZIQ, Graveball, a game I recently looked at, Bombshell, which, if you look at Iron Maiden and Bombshell clearly looks like a hyper-realistic first-person shooter game that should have sold really well, but you can see it has mixed reviews and 154 reviews, so they've gone from the concept of this character and then taken the exact same art and concept art and made it into a 2D, 3D old school style game. So they're getting worse with each release, not better. Shadow Warrior Classic, I suppose, is a game of some slight interest, but most of these games seem to be not much of anything. Alien Carnage, Halloween Harry. I think I played this when I was a kid, so maybe I would consider getting that again, but yeah, the rest of those don't seem like anything. I may have played Biomenace. A lot of clones of other games, like clones of Wolfenstein, clones of other PC games, but not even now, not really doing anything new. Monster Bash, I may have played Monster Bash. Not doing anything special, not doing anything new, and clearly they're just re-releasing their old games that they have licenses for. And at this point I'm spending too much time on each game. As for the developer, Iron Maiden is the first game they've ever developed. Yep, so this needs to leave the follow list. It's been given its time to have a first impression. If anything, it would be kind of funny if Iron Maiden somehow he wouldn't gain the rights to all the source code and the artistic content just because the name had to be changed. So Iron Maiden the band would have to sue 3D Realms and Void Point like out of existence so that they went bankrupt, so that then some other company, video game company, bought it, and then that other video game company would have to be a decent video game company that could make a game. And I don't think that there's enough here. It's just a brunette girl with a big gun, which you could do easily without using the Iron Maiden or trademark. Moving on, Alien Carnage was the game I was going to look at and see if I add it to there. We're jumping off the standard path here. Like, yeah, I'm fairly certain I remember playing this when I was a kid. But these games also suck. Let's just face it. Yeah, these are not games that I played for very long or had very much fun with. Ah yes, this was the guy where you would get coins and then there would be vending machines. And yeah, I remember this. But do I want it just because of nostalgia for an old game? Apparently it's not even on sale. There's no price here. There's no bundle. So how do you get this game? They've probably taken it off sale. He is a negative review. Not enjoyable anymore. The controls, level design, and basically everything else is super dated. It just feels annoying to play. Yeah, and I have no idea how you'd even buy this game, because there's nothing here. They must have given it away as a bundle or a pre-order special thing. Next, moving on, we have a game called Iron Ball 3. This looks crazy, but the actual game looks like it's pretty much just an Arkanoid, maybe Warlords arcade clone. I'm not a big fan of games that have a ton of neon on the screen. It's too flashy, it's distracting, and yeah, this doesn't strike me as anything other than somebody trying to put a lot of garbage on the screen to make it look like a good game when it probably isn't. Neon is often a example that they don't have any textures or ability to animate anything. $6.99 for this game. One review came out May 11th, 2018. Even if the one review is positive, which it is, it's not relevant and it doesn't look visually interesting. I don't even know why this is on the follow list. Perhaps Iron Ball 1 had some... Well, Iron Ball 2 has some positive reviews, but when you look at what Iron Ball 2 is, it's more of a 3D take on playing a Arkanoid clone, where the 3 is kind of just floating in space. There you go. Now that the screenshots will load, you just have to spin through them all. I don't think this should be on the wish list either. Oh. I don't know how I could remove it easily, but I'll just leave it on the wish list until I do a wish list cleanup. That being said, Iron Ball 3 is definitely getting removed from the follow list. Next we have Iron Marines, which I think might be a real-time strategy game. Yeah. I'm in a weird position with several categories of games. One would be real-time strategies, and others would be like visual novels, fighting games, where I just don't know where to start and which games I should play and which games I really shouldn't play. If I was going to play a real-time strategy game, I think I own some of the Command and Conquer games. That would make a lot of sense. Those are nostalgic games for me. They're well-known games. But should I play modern real-time strategy games? And if I do that, I'm not sure which ones need to be played, because it is definitely a genre that is not super popular these days. People just don't have time to play real-time strategy. Or they're still playing StarCraft 2 from decades previous, which is the other category of people. And so it's hard to justify or think that I'd want to play this. That being said, if I look at this game in just a bubble and get around that idea and just hold it to the same standards that I've been holding all the other games, this game seems to definitely have enough to be put on the wish list. It's rated very positively, 81% of 147 reviews. It came out May 15th, 2019, which means I put it on the follow list, and then it already has enough positive reviews to deserve to be on the wish list. So, yep. There's no beating around the bush here. I can't really go and look at negative reviews and say, well, Mob Rule, or find an excuse to not put it on the wish list. Mob Rule here says it's good enough. There's enough people to give it relevancy. The game looks good enough to me. So this is another game going to the wish list, and we have about 5 games going to the wish list starting with the letter I. That's not super surprising. I'm a little surprised that there actually are that many games so far starting with the letter I. Next we have Irony Curtain from Matryoshka with Love. Matryoshka, I have no idea how you'd pronounce that. Now this is a point and click satire game, but it does have the danger of being a troll game. It could be just a troll against Russia. It could be a Russian troll against America. It could be just a troll game in general. That being said, the level of animation in this cutscene that I'm seeing is quite high, even for an introductory cutscene, and it does seem like there is a point and click adventure game here with polish. So maybe I didn't look at this video, or maybe I just wanted to give it enough time to check. It's positive, 100% positive of 26 verified reviews. Came out May 16th, 2019. This might be a bit of a hidden gem of sorts. It probably should have more reviews and more people playing it, but I could also see why not. It's full audio English, German, and Polish, so either this is a beginning of a bar joke, or this is more for the other side. Metacritic gives it an 86% positive. Who's the developer? I don't think we need to look at the reviews since it's 100% positive. This developer, has he made anything else? It seems like he's made several other things that seem to be hidden object games. But there's another game I want on my wish list, or I have on my wish list. So yeah, this publisher seems like they've done a few things that are of some quality or interest. So 2 games back to back. Most point and click games are comedy point and click games if I like them. Or a lot of the point and click games I like are comedy point and click games. So Irony Curtain works that way pretty well. Next we have a game called Island Maze. Since this came out, there has been a considerable number of low effort asset flip games that have been released on Steam that look exactly like this, where you just buy an asset of an ocean, an island, a box, and a few other things, and you sell those assets with very little gameplay or ideas here. So I can pretty well tell this is going to be a no-go for this kind of game. Again, I would say this is probably a game that should be a mini game and something bigger, instead of a standalone experience. This doesn't look terrible. It does have a small consideration in the lower left hand corner where it has 3 stars that makes it feel like it is potentially just a mobile game. 12 out of 105 stars. Well, or is that the number of steps that it wants you to take to solve the puzzle and get that 3rd star? Probably the number of steps it wants you to take. This developer hasn't made anything else. This game is $1.99, but there's only 28 levels on it. It has 20 achievements, which is a little too high. Meanwhile, it's recommending Donut County, which is a much bigger known and better reviewed game, and Polybridge, which is a much bigger known kind of puzzle game. The Witness is a 3D puzzle game that I covered. It's pretty good. Tricky Towers. I think I've heard of this game, but I don't think I want to play it. So 3 reviews, only 2 are in English. One of them is just 5 stars. Just emoticons for 5 stars. Yeah, Island Maze is leaving the fall list. I couldn't possibly imagine buying this kind of game. This is a great example of how my standards have increased over the past 6 months and previous years, where games that maybe I would have wanted to play one in a category of game, I've realized actually there's not enough people that even want to play that category of game in the first place. And this is a great example. Very few people actually want to play a game that looks like this and aren't going to be sold even at $1.99. Next we have a game called Islanders, which might be very similar to the previous game in look, but is I believe, a very different game. This is a city builder simulation game. Came out April 4th, 2019. It's 94% positive of 1,980 verified purchase reviews. And there's something to be said, certainly, around the idea of running a city sim that is more puzzle built, and it is just around building a city and being done. You have a score, you're given certain items, you place them, they have spheres of influence. And I don't think even in this instance where the video is showing you a pretty large island, I don't think it gets too large. Whereas if you try to play something like City Skylines, which I did try to play and couldn't read the text because I'm looking at a TV from 10 feet away. City Skylines clearly opens up and just lets you keep on going. SimCity and other SimCity games clearly just gets away from being as much strategy as just infinite gameplay. And the minimalistic idea is very appealing to me, because otherwise I probably would never play another SimCity builder. $4.99 for this game, 26 achievements, 82 on Metacritic. I don't really need to go look at negative reviews. This one should be on the wish list. Again, if I have to put my money where my mouth is, though, maybe I wouldn't buy a city builder. So it might just sit on my wish list for a while, and at a certain point, if my wish list gets too big, I might decide to cut it down, or my standards might just go up higher. Next game we have is called Isles of the Sky, which seems to be a clone of, is it Karskakone? Which there's a digital version of that game already on Steam, so I don't know why I would want to buy or play a clone of that game. So this is 68% positive of 16 reviews. It's $6.99. Images are not loading. It seems like this is pretty much a direct ripoff of that game. We could look at the reviews. Another board game marred by game-breaking bugs. The game works like the actual game once they fix the issue where exit game stays in the new game. I'll buy it again. Just negative reviews. Game-breaking bugs on local multiplayer. Sort of game you'd play a couple times with a mate who really knows how to play and wins convincingly. So a lot of negative reviews. Buggy, fails to log in. Running the game takes 100% of the GPU. That's just terrible programming for what the game is. Requires a third-party account with Asmodee Digital, which is Asmodee Digital is known for publishing bad board games, pretty much. I kind of wonder if Isles of the Sky actually is a real board game, but yeah, it really just looks like a clone. And if you're gonna play any tabletop games, Tabletop Simulator is only $20 right now, and it probably still is the best bet you ever play. Let's see if we can find Yeah, it may not even be the game. I may be naming a different game. Anyways, but I can't spell it, certainly. So yeah, this should definitely leave the follow list. I assume this did not have any reviews when I first looked at it. But yeah, another example of just terrible programming, which should not happen. Next game we have to look at is called Istanbul Digital Edition. Potentially politically dangerous. I'm not even sure Istanbul is still the name of that area. Is in it, so that might be offensive just by the name. Apparently it's a digital version of a top 100 board game of all time. I don't know what list they're referencing. There should be an asterisk and just quote your references if you're going to say something like this. Seems like a merchant style board game that doesn't look terrible. It looks kind of interesting. It's 87% positive with 32 users. It came out October 18th, 2018. So this might be a bit of a hidden gem. I'm not particularly sure how many board games I really want to cover on my channel. $9.99 is definitely no discount, but it's not a ridiculous price for a digital version of a board game. It says it has online multiplayer, but it requires a third-party account from PlayFab, which I guess is better than Osmoti Digital. Seems like they are naming several awards they got. Let's see if we could see some negative reviews and see if there's something that raises a Let's see. Making Istanbul game translate to 5+ European countries but doesn't have Turkish translation. Well, that's not really a legitimate complaint in my opinion. Let's see. Because who they're going to translate to are going to be the languages they can easily translate to, or the languages that are going to sell really well. So English and French and German covers most of Europe. Spain, Spanish probably covers Spain and Mexico. Simplified Chinese covers most of China. Dutch is an odd choice. Japanese is a good choice. Korean is a good choice. Polish is a bit of an odd choice. Let's see. The other reviews. I think after trying the game, having played the tabletop version, certain things need a bit of streamlining to speed it up. Allow people to skip the confirm button per action to speed it up when there's no payment, or they leave no assistant behind. Don't allow people to zoom into the tiles to see what the tiles are if they can't move there. Just have a view button pop up. Don't have confirm again which assistant I want to recall when using the recall assistant function. So very, very bad user interface, it says. Alright, well, 2 reviews are negative, 30 are positive. A mob rule in my mind tells me that this is probably as good as most board games are on Steam, which is a question certainly whether you need to cover any board games or digital version of board games or own any of them. Particularly, am I in a better position because I've never played Istanbul, or am I a worse position because I've never played this game? When trying to play this game, I get a tutorial mode that explains how to play the game, or will I just be shown a large bit of text that I have to read to understand the rules? How easy is this game to pick up? It's probably pretty difficult to pick up. It seems pretty complicated. Can I play this on single player? It seems like I can. So what is the AI like? These are questions that you're not really going to get the answer with 32 reviews. But the price seems right, so this is going to go to the wish list. Next we have a game called It's a Trap, which I may simply have put on my follow list for the Star Wars reference. That being said, it's making a Star Wars reference and then showing a Indiana Jones reference, where you're trying to steal the golden monkey, I guess, and there's a procedurally generated random elements. Can you survive deadly traps and unexplored catacombs? Reclaim the legendary crystal of truth before Nazis, and you will see the world differently. Test your wisdom, courage, and moves in this real challenge only in VR. So it's a VR only game. It is 40% positive with 10 user reviews. It came out March 13th, 2019. So what I'm guessing is this is very much a case of just a poorly programmed experience. Even at that, this really is only about 5 minutes of entertainment for VR. $19.99. February 11th, they added more traps, 14 more traps. Full audio English. It's being recommended alongside Cute Girls VR, so it's definitely not getting put next to Great Gems. Here we have, the idea is good, but it's poorly made. No physics, no interaction with anything except a treasure. You can basically ask someone to take your controller hand and to take it to the objective and pick it up while you stand on the other side of traps. Not worth 16 euros, maybe 1 or 3 euros. Some levels require you to do ridiculous acrobatics and lightning fast actions, which can't be done with a bulky headset attached to with wires. And every failure is countered with a white box and a blue portal, which is centered literally on the border of your playing area. So you have to draw it close to any objects. So, okay, this is early access, but man, it's so buggy I can barely play it. Just a lot of negative reviews about the experience. And it's not even labeled as early access anymore. So even if this was fully polished at this point, its initial viewing, its first impression, was that early access state in which it was buggy. And it seems kind of buggy even now looking at this video. It seems like the hands don't move smoothly with the controllers, and it's not widescreen in this video when one would assume the VR headset would be widescreen. And I assume you're controlling your movement with a controller and not walking around, because that would be dangerous. The whole thing's potentially really dangerous because you might do something crazy in the game and realize you're punching a hole in your wall. So it's a trap. Sadly, not a game making it to the wish list. Well, it was a VR game anyways, so it wasn't going to make it to the wish list anyways. But it's not staying on the fall list as a VR game. And yeah, I'm very surprised it's taken 2 hours to go through all the games starting with the letter I. I would have thought this would have taken considerably less time, at least 30 minutes. But we are done here now, so let's wrap up this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos, because that helps me with YouTube, tells them that my videos are worth watching. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. When you subscribe, click the notification bell, blah blah blah. If you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon down below. That would be very much supported. Or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. That's why I'm doing all this work, to curate the wishlist. Or if you don't want to make a decision, you can also gift cards to friends, or just gift a game you'd like to see me cover, even if it's something I am not particularly interested in playing. All will feel very obliged to cover it. So there is a realm there where you could gift me something that's pretty awful and drive me crazy. That's it for this recording. As always, thank you for watching. Have a good evening.